Hello YouTube, Jerry Kirkpatrick here, and don't be afraid, even though the impetus for this video is to make a hammer form, you will not see a lot of sawing and sanding and that type of thing. The purpose for this video is to show more layout and the reasoning behind the way that I approach this project. So with that being said, let's walk through how I got to this point, and then we will start actual shaping of the hammer form. First, I did not use wheelbarrow handles to make this piece. I went to the local lumber yard, and the only thing that they had, being this is a very small town, only 5,000, they had alder, and the only two sticks they had were 1x4. So the first thing I did was run the lengths, they were like 6-7 feet long, through a planer and brought both of them down to 3/4 of an inch. So when they were all stacked up, I came out with the finished height of 3 inches. So I cut all of the pieces to the proper length, so they were overlapping one another, and then glued them up. The next thing I did was true up two sides, one end and one long edge, and then glued some sandpaper down to my bandsaw and smoothed out all of the saw cut marks on both the long and the one short end. After those were all smoothed out, I turned it on the flats, the two mating surfaces, and sanded those so they were perfectly flat. Next, I taped on the two patterns, one for the right and one for the left, patterns that gave me the layout so I could punch and drill for the dowel pins that will align the two pieces when they're put together. After I had them put together and made sure that all of or both of the two surfaces, the long end and the short end, were smooth, I drew a line down each of those sides as a reference point for the center of both the oval and the round. Next, I made two pieces out of 16 gauge. One on the left there is for the oval, obviously, and then one for the round. And before I took the paper off, I used my square center punch and put a small tick mark on each of the horizontal and vertical lines. And here you can see how the light refracts off of a square punch. If you use a round punch, it just looks like a dot. But with the square punch, you can actually see the light refracting off of it, and your eye picks it up much better. And the purpose for those two punches, both on the horizontal and vertical, were so I could draw the lines back on the parts and get them lined up on the blank. So while I was doing some drilling and other metal work, I took my plasma cutter and cut out a blank which will be supporting at least my half of the buck while I'm doing the hammering. And I did countersink both sides of the piece, so if Ron decides that he wants to use this while he's making his half, it's ready to be used on either side. So, and obviously, if Ron decides to use this and I have to ship it to him, I'll probably send it out and have it chromed. Almost always I use a scribe to do any layout work. This is an old tungsten scribe. It's a tungsten that I use in the Heliarc. When they get too short, I repurpose them as a scribe. And at the very least, if I'm doing some cutting either with a Beverly shear or hand shears, I'll use the very fine Sharpie marker. But in this case, I wanted to stay away from the line, so I used a broader marker to trace right along the edge of the pattern that I had laid down. And when I make this cut on the bandsaw, I'll stay to the outside of that line, which affords me a small margin. So when I come up to the shape, I'll only have maybe 1/8 of an inch that I'll have to remove right at the parting line. And here's the paper pattern taped back onto the blank. You can see the transition line here, which was transferred to both sides. And here you can see the angle that has to be cut going from the 3-inch to the 2-inch opening on this side. So let me get over on the sander and remove all of this material, tapering up to the 3-inch. And when I get that done, I'll be back. So I have now got both tapers done, going from the 3-inch to the 2-inch for the oval. The only thing I used for doing this was a handheld belt sander that I put in my vise, and I made a stop for the end to have a little bit more control over where the sanding was being done. So the next thing to do is take these plates off and start laying out the lines that will be going right across the point here of the circle, and I'll start grinding those off. Let me get these plates off and I'll take you over to the vise and we'll start laying this thing out. So you're saying, Jerry, why, if you're doing woodwork, are you over on a surface plate? Well, it just so happens that my surface plate was made for the computer chip industry, and they had a machine bolted down to it. I only paid 45 bucks for it because nobody wanted one with all the holes and all of these 1/4-20 inserts all over the place, and I've never seen it be a problem for me. So with this arrangement, I usually have a scribe in here instead of using the regular height gauge marking. I can set up anything I want in this particular arrangement. It's solid, it stays right where you want it to be. And let me bring you in a little bit closer and I'll show you exactly what this arrangement is. So what I have here is a piece of 5/8 square tubing that I squoze until it would be the same, a nice tight fit for the pin. And since the pin is tapered, I squeezed this end just a little bit tighter. So when it's down in there, it is rock solid. It is going to stay right there. This is just a shaft with a piece of sheet metal that I brazed. In fact, I brazed the nut on and this little piece of sheet metal using copper. And if you look at my video how to use Romex as brazing rod, you can see how that's done. So I just put the pin in there. As long as I keep the pin in line with the top of the shaft over the piece that I'm marking, it comes out pretty good. And I'm coming just to this line. You can see that this much material will go from here to this little tick line. That will be one cut that starts the 1.5 inch radius for the 3-inch diameter. And then you can see this little tick mark here, which will go at an angle to this one. And that will make the transition from the 1-inch radius here to the 1.5 inch radius up here. That's where the transition will take place, is from that point to that point. And just for clarification, you can see that the width here is much narrower than we have up here. That's where the transition from the 2-inch to the 3-inch takes place, is in that angle right there and right there. So I'm going to get all of these marked. I'll do the sanding, and I think there's not a lot that you can see while doing this process. It's just going to be a lot of sanding. Once I get finished cutting this portion off, I'll make another line and another line here, and then you can see that there's a very small amount here and here that will have to be removed to make that 3-inch diameter here, and the 2-inch here. 1-inch radius. We'll knock off all of this, knock off all of this, and make my transition through here. So now nothing more to do than marking and sanding. And with a lot of sanding, one full day's worth of sanding, it's going to take me longer than that to get this place cleaned up. We have a finished hammer form, and the next thing that we're going to be doing is actually moving some metal. In our next episode, we'll be making a pattern, finding out how to arrive at the amount of metal it will take to cover half of this, and where the different amounts of tucking is going to take place. Most of it right in this area here. So don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. Please consider becoming a Patreon. And if you got anything out of this video, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. See you later.